The audience inside Studio 6B in New York was buzzing with anticipation as The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon began taping what was expected to be a lighthearted episode featuring comedian and television host James Corden. The two men had shared years of friendly appearances and mutual admiration, both celebrated for their affable personalities and late-night charisma. Yet, what unfolded that night shocked not only those in the studio but millions online who later saw snippets of the tense exchange. What was supposed to be a reunion between two popular talk show hosts turned into a confrontation that left James Corden walking off the set before the segment could finish. The evening began as any typical Fallon show does. Jimmy opened with his usual monologue, peppering jokes about current events and a few playful references to Corden's decision to leave The Late Late Show earlier in the year. When Corden finally walked out, the crowd roared with applause. He looked cheerful at first, waving and jokingly pretending to trip over the couch before sitting beside Fallon. The energy was good-natured, but within minutes, subtle cracks began to appear in the interaction. Jimmy welcomed him warmly, saying, "It's so good to see you, man. I thought after your farewell show you'd be off in some English countryside drinking tea and not coming back to television again." Corden smiled but added with a bit of an edge, "Yeah, well, I did try that, but then I saw some of your shows and thought, maybe late night still needs a little class." The audience laughed, but Fallon's smile flickered for a moment before he moved on to his next cue card. At first, viewers thought the slight tension was part of a comedic bit. After all, both men are known for self-deprecating humor and playful jabs. However, the tone began to shift when Jimmy brought up one of Corden's past controversies involving his alleged rude behavior at a restaurant in New York. Fallon, in his attempt to tease Corden, said, "So, have you been allowed back into Balthazar yet, or are you still banned from brunch?" The line drew nervous laughter from the crowd, but Corden's expression darkened. "That's not really funny, Jimmy," he replied, leaning slightly forward. "You know, when you've apologized and moved on, it's not great to keep bringing that up." Fallon, caught off guard, tried to defuse the moment by chuckling and adding, "Oh, come on, I'm just teasing, mate. You know we all mess up sometimes." But Corden wasn't smiling anymore. "Yeah, but there's a difference between messing up and having people constantly remind you of it on national television," he said. The audience fell quiet, sensing that the tension had become real. Fallon, still trying to maintain the show's upbeat energy, shifted to a new topic. He began discussing Corden's life after leaving CBS and his move back to the UK, but the earlier exchange lingered awkwardly in the air. As Jimmy joked about British weather and Corden's adjustment to life without Los Angeles sunshine, Corden interrupted, saying, "It's funny, Jimmy, you keep talking about me like I've retired. I haven't stopped working, I just left one show." His tone was clipped but calm, though it was clear his irritation hadn't subsided. The audience once again laughed politely, but the chemistry between the two hosts had vanished. Fallon looked visibly uncomfortable but pressed on, asking about Corden's rumored new projects, including a potential streaming show. "People miss you," Jimmy said. "Are you planning to come back to late-night TV?" Corden sighed, giving a forced smile. "You know, Jimmy, sometimes it's nice to just step away from the noise. Not everyone wants to keep doing the same thing forever." At that moment, Fallon appeared to misinterpret Corden's response as another opening for humor. "Well, that's easy for you to say. You already cashed the CBS checks," he joked. Some audience members gasped slightly, unsure if they should laugh. Corden stared at him for a few seconds before saying quietly, "That's a cheap shot, Jimmy." Fallon tried to recover, insisting it was all in good fun, but the damage was done. The tension only escalated when Fallon asked about Corden's reputation among his peers in the entertainment industry, referencing the online backlash that often followed him during his time as a host. "You know, there's this thing about you online. People either love you or, well, not so much," Fallon said hesitantly. "Do you ever read those comments?" Corden's reply came out sharp. "No, I don't, Jimmy, because I actually have a life outside of reading what people who don't know me think." "Maybe you should try that." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the studio audience. Fallon raised his hands defensively, clearly stunned by the jab. "Hey, man, no offense, I was just asking," he said. Corden leaned back, crossed his arms, and muttered, "Yeah, sure you were. At this point, production staff behind the cameras were visibly uneasy. One stage manager signaled to Fallon's team to cut to a commercial break earlier than planned, but Jimmy seemed intent on salvaging the segment. He attempted to lighten the mood again, asking Corden to participate in one of the show's comedic games, Wheel of Musical Impressions, which had been a viral hit in the past when Corden previously appeared. However, Corden declined. "I don't think I'm in the mood for that," he said curtly. Fallon, ever the performer, tried to laugh it off, saying, "Come on, James. You can't come on The Tonight Show and not sing, it's like a rule." But Corden shook his head. "Maybe not everyone wants to play by your rules tonight, Jimmy." The comment drew an uncomfortable silence. The energy that once made both men beloved late-night icons had completely evaporated. Trying once more to steer things back on track, Fallon leaned forward and said, "James, you know I respect you, man. I think you're one of the funniest people in the business. We've always had fun when you're here." Corden looked at him, his expression softening slightly, but before Fallon could continue, Corden interrupted again. "I think sometimes people mistake fun for mockery, and I'm just not interested in being the butt of the joke anymore." The audience, unsure of how to react, remained silent. Fallon looked briefly at the producers off stage, but then Corden continued speaking. "I came here tonight because I thought we were going to have a good conversation, about creativity, about change, about what it means to move on. But this feels more like I'm being picked apart for laughs." Fallon began to respond, "That's not what this is," but Corden stood up. "Maybe not to you," he said, "but that's how it feels." He gave a tight smile to the audience and added, "Thank you, everyone, but I think I'm done here." With that, he began walking toward the edge of the stage. Fallon stood up, visibly flustered, calling out, "James, come on, don't do that, we're just having fun." But Corden didn't turn back. The band, unsure whether to play or not, remained silent as he exited the stage. For a few long seconds, the studio was frozen. Fallon glanced off camera, and one of the producers quickly gestured for a commercial cut. The show went to break earlier than scheduled. Audience members exchanged shocked looks. Some thought it might have been a scripted bit, but the uneasy expressions from Fallon's team made it clear it wasn't. When the show returned, Fallon appeared composed but noticeably subdued. He made a light-hearted attempt to move past the incident, joking, "Well, sometimes our guests leave us wanting more, literally." The crowd laughed politely, but the tension lingered in the air. Backstage, reports from studio staff later suggested that Corden left the building immediately after the segment ended, avoiding any post-show meet and greet or photo ops. Fallon, meanwhile, reportedly met with producers to discuss how the footage would be edited before broadcast. The segment featuring the confrontation was heavily cut before airing, but snippets captured by audience members quickly surfaced online, fueling speculation about what had happened. Clips began circulating on social media platforms within hours, showing Corden's sharp retorts and eventual walk-off. Some fans defended him, arguing that Fallon had pushed too far by making jokes about old controversies and Corden's reputation. Others accused Corden of being overly sensitive and unable to take a joke. Within a day, James Corden trended on Twitter alongside Fallon Confrontation, with millions of views on short clips taken from the live taping. Entertainment blogs and tabloid outlets seized on the story, offering conflicting accounts of what happened behind the scenes. Some claimed that Corden had arrived at the studio already in a bad mood after a stressful morning of interviews, while others insisted Fallon's producers had encouraged him to poke fun at Corden to stir up viral moments. Neither host commented publicly for the first 48 hours, adding to the speculation. When Fallon finally addressed the incident during the following night's monologue, he downplayed it, saying, "You know, sometimes when two friends get together, it doesn't always go as planned. We're good. Everything's fine." However, sources close to the production hinted that Corden had privately expressed disappointment with how he was treated and that he would not be returning to The Tonight Show anytime soon. Corden's team remained mostly silent, though one insider told a UK tabloid that James felt ambushed and mocked for ratings. The source added that while he appreciated Fallon personally, he believed the segment had been structured to make him uncomfortable. By the weekend, the fallout had divided fans across both sides of the Atlantic. Supporters of Fallon argued that his teasing style had always been harmless and that Corden overreacted to a few jokes. Supporters of Corden countered that comedians are human, too, and shouldn't have to endure public embarrassment disguised as humor. Whether real or exaggerated by internet speculation, the confrontation highlighted a changing tone in late-night television. Viewers have grown increasingly aware of the fine line between banter and bullying, and the Corden-Fallon clash, regardless of the behind-the-scenes truth, became symbolic of that tension. As one entertainment columnist put it, for two men who built their careers on laughter, it was ironic to watch them fall silent on national television, not because of a lack of jokes, but because of a lack of understanding. In the end, James Corden's walk-off was more than just a viral moment. It was a reminder that even in the world of scripted entertainment, emotions can spill over, egos can clash, and the line between performance and reality can disappear in an instant.